Hello and welcome to the RealBand 2011 New Features and New RealTracks video. In this video we're going to take a look at some of the great new features in RealBand 2011, and we'll also be looking at some of the fantastic new styles in RealTracks sets 102 through 121. Right now we're hearing a hot gypsy jazz band with acoustic bass, 2 acoustic guitars, drums, and we have soloists changing every part marker, 2 distinctly different guitar soloists, and a hot fiddle. One of the most exciting new features in RealBand 2011 is that there are vast improvements to all RealTracks, so that they sound more natural over a much wider range of tempos. These RealTracks were recorded at 220 beats per minute, but let's see what happens when I stretch them to 300. You can hear that even after a stretch of 80 beats per minute, the instruments still sound fantastic, and most importantly, they sound real. We'll explore these audio improvements in more detail later in the video, as well as some of the many other great new features. But first, let's check out some of the new RealTracks playing in RealBand 2011. For those of you who are new to RealBand, I'll explain a little bit about what it is. RealBand is a fully featured and powerful music arranging, sequencing, and digital recording program. RealBand combines the most popular features from PowerTracks Pro Audio and Band-in-a-Box into an all-in-one sequencing program with automatic accompaniment. With RealBand, you can create an arrangement with Band-in-a-Box tracks, type in the chords, add RealTracks and real drums that follow the chord changes, add your own tracks, and then edit and produce a finished song without ever leaving the program. RealBand is loaded with powerful features that make it easy to produce your own song arrangements as if you were in the recording studio with top session musicians. In this demo we're listening to right now, I simply entered these chords into the chord chart, picked this Celtic Reels Band-in-a-Box style, which in turn loaded and generated these 3 RealTracks, new in RealTracks set 104. You can see the Band-in-a-Box tracks are distinguished by a different color, something new in RealBand 2011. I then recorded my own track, this accordion playing the traditional Irish reel, the swallow's tail. And you can record up to 48 of your own audio tracks. You can use any combination of your own recorded tracks and Band-in-a-Box tracks. The new Celtic styles in RealTracks set 104 have both jigs and reels, played on acoustic bass, acoustic guitar, piano, and the bodhrán, a traditional Celtic hand drum. Here we have some great new soloist sets from Nashville guitar legend Brent Mason, including a set of rock soloists and a set of country soloists. This is the medium rock groove. And here's a tasty rock ballad. Here are some of the soloists from the country set. We have some great new jazz sets, including Vibes Comping and Soloing by Vibes master Steve Nelson. Here's some of his jazz swing soloing. We have a whole new set of piano comping and soloing by New York jazz great Mike LeDunn. We have two new sets of praise and worship styles, each with a full band of electric bass, multiple rhythm electric guitars, piano, synth pads, and soloists, like the one you're hearing here. And we have two new sets of reggae, also full bands with bass, guitar, piano, B3, and drums. In addition to the improved stretching, some of the great new features in RealBand 2011 include soloist medleys, the addition of RealCharts, improvements to the style picker, MIDI and audio transpose options for key signature changes, MIDI solos and harmonies, and lots of other helpful improvements. Let's take a closer look at some of these features now. As we mentioned earlier, we've made big improvements to the sounds of the RealTracks so that they sound more natural over a much wider range of tempos with the Elastique Pro version 2 time stretching and pitch transposition engine by Z-Plane Development. These improvements are built in, so there's nothing you need to do to get it working. Your existing songs will just sound better over a much wider range of tempos and transpositions. In order to see how dramatic the improvements to the stretching in RealBand 2011 are, we'll first take a look back at RealBand 2010.5. I have the Fast Gypsy Jazz style loaded here. Now I'll select all of the audio tracks and stretch from 220 to 300. And you can really hear how the audio sounds thin and stretched. And now back in RealBand 2011, first of all, I don't have to go into that dialog. I can just change the tempo to 300, and this tempo dialog now opens right where I clicked on the tempo rather than in the middle of the screen as it was in previous versions. And these options are available for me in the tempo dialog. And I let it do its thing. And as you can hear, the quality has drastically improved over RealBand 2010.5. Another benefit of Elastique is that the size of the RealTracks is now much smaller. We've previously had to include pre-transposed versions of our files, but since Elastique is now able to transpose on the fly, those files are no longer necessary. which means that it's taking up only 30% of the space that it used to on your hard drive. Another feature is that when soloists are stretched to extreme tempos like this, they sound more musical than in previous versions. This is because musicians tend to play more behind the beat at faster tempos, which is taken into account by RealBand with a very small shift in the placement of the track. You'll notice, since we just looked at RealBand 2010, that there's a lot more color in RealBand 2011. Plus, you'll also notice that you can see the notes that the soloist is playing in notation and on the on-screen piano keyboard. These are two more new features that we're going to explore while checking out some other new RealTracks. RealCharts are a brand new addition to RealBand 2011. For this solo right now, you can see that the solo is an audio solo on track 14, but there's an additional track with MIDI information on it right below. And if you look closely, you can see that the MIDI notes represent what is being played on the audio track. This is an incredibly powerful tool for learning, arranging, and chart printing. With that track selected, I can have a notation track display the notation, and for bass and guitar styles it also displays the tab. And you can see the notes go by on the on-screen guitar fretboard. For some styles, including this Brent Mason Soloist, bends are also indicated by blue notes on the fretboard and in notation, and there's a B displayed in the tab. I'm going to show you how to get RealCharts working by adding another instrument, a pedal steel, to the mix here on the next available track. I'll right-click on track 16 and make sure that Also Generate RealChart is enabled. And then I'll select and generate RealTrack. So I'll filter the list by pedal steel 65, which means that it'll narrow the list of available RealTracks to any with pedal steel in the name and whose tempo range covers 65 beats per minute. And since our song is even eighths, this one looks perfect. And it's generating a pedal steel part based on the chords entered in the song. And now, as you can see, it's generated a new audio track and a new MIDI track. And I can click on the audio and select Show RealChart Notation. And since the RealChart is on track 17, we can see that the notes above with 17 represent the pedal steel. Different colored tracks are also new in RealBand 2011. You can see that the band-in-a-box tracks, which are determined by this style, rock ballad Brent Mason, are colored green. They're the ones that would be regenerated if you select Generate BB. The RealTracks we generated are colored yellow, as would be tracks we recorded ourselves. MIDI tracks are a darker gray than the unused tracks. You'll notice that the band-in-a-box style is BAL BMS1, which doesn't exactly give you much information about what's in the style, but there's a new field underneath the style display that gives you the full name of the style, which is a lot more useful. This leads us to the style picker, where there are lots of other new features. For those of you with larger monitors, the style picker display is now wider. There are new columns beside the styles, including the number of instruments in the style, and whether or not you're missing at least one of the RealTracks or real drums for this style. When I move my mouse over the columns, you'll see that there are pop-up hints. Pop-up hints have been improved throughout the program, giving more useful information than in previous versions. Probably the most useful new style picker enhancement is the filter. This allows you to narrow down the list of displayed styles so you can find exactly what you're looking for. You can narrow the list using any combination of these criteria, from 8ths or 16ths, swing or even. You can pick a tempo, and it will be narrowed to styles whose tempo range covers that tempo. You can set the number of instruments in the style, or pick a genre. I'll pick jazz here. You can narrow the list to only show styles that contain certain instruments. I'll pick vibes. RealTracks or Real Drums artists. Whether or not the feel matches your currently loaded song. You can choose to display styles with MIDI, RealTracks, or a combination of both. I'll pick Real Styles. Or narrow it to certain style sets. Now, with the 3 filters I chose, let's see how the list is narrowed down. And you can see that only these 4 styles fit the criteria I entered. And if I click on them individually, I can read the memo on the right, and below that is a second automatically generated memo that lists the names of all instruments, number of instruments, RealTracks or Real Drums used. It would also show you if you don't have the required RealTracks installed. It looks like 2 of these styles have Vibes Soloists, and 2 have Vibes Comping. I'm going to pick the Bossa Comping and load the song demo. You can see that there are 2 demo options at 2 different tempos. This is because this Real style will load RealTracks of different tempos depending on the tempo of your song. We'll get into that more a bit later. For now, I'll pick the 140 beats per minute demo. You'll notice that while the parts are generating, the mouse cursor stays in the mode indicating that the computer is busy. This can either be an hourglass or, in my case here, a blue circle. This is new with RealBand 2011. Now I'm going to introduce you to a new feature called the Soloist medleys. This is where you can generate a solo that switches between different instruments. You can either create your own medley here, or you can pick from our list of preset medleys in the main list. There are medleys that switch instruments every 4 bars, 8 bars, every chorus, or every part marker. There are also some medleys that alternate between solos and silence, which is a great way to practice. With your own instrument, you can listen for 4 bars, then play, then listen, then play. I'll first narrow the list to show medleys that are even around 140 beats per minute. And I'll pick this one that alternates between instruments and silence. A useful new feature is a 3rd track size. Previous versions of RealBand had the standard size and large, and there's now a mini option, which is useful for minimizing tracks that you aren't currently using, to be able to focus on the tracks you are using. Tracks 1 to 11 are the tracks reserved for band-in-a-box instruments that are in the style, but in this particular case, tracks 1 to 8 are not in use, so RealBand has automatically put them into mini mode. We've already seen the benefits of the new élastique features on time stretching, and now we're going to see élastique's superior transposing features as well. We're going to transpose everything from the key of G to the key of A flat, simply by changing the key signature. Transpose all. By default, it won't transpose any drums, which is what we want, of course. And as simple as that, all tracks have been transposed. You can now remove multiple tracks at once by shift-clicking to select as many tracks as you want and going to Track, Remove Track, and they're all gone. I'm now going to change the tempo down to 75 beats per minute. This would be quite a stretch even for élastique, but a new feature in RealBand 2011 is that there is a new Song Generation Preferences item, Allow Auto RealTracks Tempo Substitution. So if I regenerate at this tempo, instead of stretching down from 140, it sees if there are corresponding RealTracks styles recorded at that lower tempo and swaps them in. In this case, there were styles recorded at 85 beats per minute, which is then an easy stretch down to 75. In the past, we wouldn't have been able to see that 85 text there because the name would have been cut off up here. A new feature is that they display longer track names that spill over into the second line. I'd like to add a flute soloist to this bossa now, so I'll filter by bossa flute. Now you can see that there is only a flute at 140 beats per minute, but you'll also see that there's a variation that says double time, and in the tempo column it shows as 70. Double time means that Band in a Box treats a style at half the tempo when generating, so rather than stretch down to 70, it just reads the chords at double the rate. In our case, the song is 75 beats per minute, so it'll then stretch up from 70 to 75. You can make any RealTracks style double time or half time, which is the opposite, or triple time, which turns a waltz into 12/8, by picking the style and setting the time base here. But as we saw in the list, we have dedicated styles that are set to double time, so you can easily see the ones that are useful here. Let's see how this double time flute sounds. Other new features in RealBand 2011 include new flash messages for quicker workflow. More dialogues that previously required you to press OK have now been changed to flash messages that let you know the issue, but don't require that you do anything. There are new features to ensure that all of your BB folders are selected correctly. All of these features and more await you in RealBand 2011. Have fun!